Hey guys, the Wolf Den here, and today I'm going to be unboxing and reviewing the Warhammer Age of Darkness and Horus Heresy Deimos Pattern Rhino for the Space Marine Legions. We'll be briefly discussing the lore of this vehicle and some background history of the model itself. Later on in this video, we'll be covering how to modify the weapons mounts to maximize your ability to swap out heavy and special weapons on your Rhino, and seeing how the Deimos Pattern Rhino stacks up against other Rhino variants. The Rhino armored transport has always been one of the mainstays of the Imperium's Space Marine forces, especially during the Horus Heresy. Strong, reliable, easily constructed, and armed with a wide variety of defensive weaponry, the Rhino was an extremely common sight on the battlefields during the Great Crusade, as well as the Horus Heresy which followed. The Rhino's main purpose was to act as an infantry carrier, and was utilized by both traitor and loyalist forces alike to move Space Marine squads through countless combat zones across the galaxy. The Deimos Pattern Rhino, which is recognizable for its angular front windows and round side doors, as compared to its more modern Mars pattern contemporary, and was capable of mounting several varieties of special and heavy weapons to defend itself and its Space Marine cargo, including heavy flamers, multi-meltas, and combi weapons, in addition to the standard bolter weapon systems. Deimos pattern transports are able to carry a squad of Space Marines and power armor into battle, which usually number around 10, as occasionally apothecaries and other units may be attached to the unit which embarks in the Rhino, in which the Rhino has room to accommodate them. Deimos pattern Rhinos in the service of the Space Marine Legions are often highly decorated with the usual flair of their parent legions, with Legion iconography often displayed on their side doors. Along with its armored hull, the Deimos Pattern Rhino is certainly not lacking in the capability of defending its passengers. It is normally mounted with a pair of remote-operated bolters. However, it may also mount a variety of special and heavy weapons to counter different threats. This versatility of the Deimos Pattern Rhino's robust frame has allowed it to be adapted and used as a base for other vehicles during the Age of Darkness, such as the Deimos Pattern Predator tank and the Deimos Pattern Whirlwind. The model of the Deimos Pattern Rhino has an interesting history. The 2022 version of the Deimos Rhino that we'll be taking a look at in this review is actually a throwback and a reimagining of the first model of Rhino transport that originated in 1988 during the Rogue Trader era of Warhammer 40,000's history. I actually possess two of these relic transports from the Rogue Trader era, and will be showing one of them off later in this video for comparison's sake. The Age of Darkness Deimos Rhino kit in this video is an all-new, all-plastic and modern kit, and is actually the second updated version of the Deimos Rhino in the modern 40K scale to have been made. The first version of a modern Deimos Rhino kit was introduced in 2012, seen here, and was a resin and plastic hybrid kit produced by Forge World. These resin upgrades parts to the Mars Pattern Rhino chassis converted it into the Deimos pattern. However, this fusion of resin and plastic can be extremely tricky to work with, especially with its abundance of flat armored panel pieces. Which finally brings us to the 2022 Age of Darkness Rhino, the subject of this review. And without further ado, let's take a look at this transport for your Space Marine forces. So here we have the box containing the Horus Heresy Deimos Pattern Rhino transport. I've been excited to get my hands on this kit ever since it was announced, and I've been looking forward to showing this kit off in further detail. The artwork on the front of the box is really nice, with the Rhino in front, flanked by some Space Marines and a Contemptor Dreadnought. I've always loved these diorama-style boxes. Flipping the box around, and here we have additional views of the Rhino. There's one styled in the colors of the Sons of Horus. We can also see different ways you can build your Rhino. You can equip a Havoc missile launcher, a heavy bolter, or a multi-melta, for example. These are only some of the options that the Rhino can be equipped with, and later on I'll show you how to get the most out of these weapon options on your model. Over on the right here we have a few painting guides showing the Sons of Horus paint scheme, or how to paint your Rhino as an Imperial Fist transport, as well as the standard vehicle transfer sheet for Heresy era vehicles. I have to say this is one of the kit's weak points in my opinion, is that this kit lacks additional Loyalist or Traitor physical iconography, as well as there being a lack of non-Imperial Fist Sons of Horus aligned decals. Given how difficult vehicle freehanding painting can be, as well as the exclusive inclusion of physical decorative bits in the new plastic Spartan kit that are not included in this kit, it is rather disappointing that you don't get more customization options for your Rhino in this way. Now that the box is out of the way, let's take a look at the contents. So first up we have the instructions. Pretty standard stuff. A picture of the Rhino on the front, which looks nice, and the instructions are clearly labeled and easy to follow, with no major mistakes as far as I can tell during the build. The experience of putting this Rhino together is almost identical to most of the other 40k Rhino builds, such as the standard Mars Pattern Rhino or Mars Pattern Predator tank. So if you're familiar with those, this build will pose no problem to you. I would also say that this build is simple and satisfying enough that it would make for an excellent first Warhammer vehicle or larger model, as well for those who are new to the hobby or to Space Marines as a faction in general. Here we start adding the equipment and the special weapons. This kit comes with a ton of extra weapons and gear, which is awesome because it lets you really customize your Rhino to make them stand out from one another. You can add smoke launchers, a hunter-killer missile, and a searchlight to the top of the Rhino's chassis. And there's an option to add a dozer blade too. In addition, you also have a choice of many hatch-mounted or pinto-mounted weapons, including quite a few heavy weapon choices as well. It is fairly simple to make most of the weapons swappable without the use of magnets, though to get every single option perfectly, you would probably have to magnetize a bit. But I found out a few simple tricks to make things work out, which I will show off later in this video. Going back to the weapons, the first options are pinto-mounted combi bolters, like the old Rogue Traitor Rhino has. You could also use one of the special turret mounts to have a pinto-mounted combi bolter on a single hatch cover, which allows for an additional weapon choice. In addition, by using this same weapons mount, you can arm your Rhino with a choice of combi weapons. These include a second combi bolter, a combi flamer, a combi melta, a combi plasma, or even a combi volkite charger, all of which are included in this kit, which I think is really cool. And you can also take a pinto-mounted Havoc launcher. You also have the choice of using a pinto-mounted heavy weapon. Weapon choices include a powerful multi-melta, a lethal heavy bolter, or you could choose to take the incinerating power of a heavy flamer to back up your Marines when they disembark. As with the smaller weapons, later on I'll show you how to build your Rhino in a way that lets you swap out all three without the use of magnets. There's a few additional options that your Rhino can take, including a turret cover with no weapon, a Space Marine gunner to man the heavy weapons, or you can take a Marine without the heavy weapon acting as a tank commander with customization options for both Marines. The next thing I want to take a look at is the water slide decal sheet. As stated before, I'm not a big fan of this decal sheet, for the main reason being that as Legion agnostic as this kit is, this decal sheet is really only helpful if you want to model a Rhino of the Sons of Horus or the Imperial Fists. I understand that they're the main factions of this edition of Heresy, but having either physical Legion agnostic decorations or a more general vehicle decal sheet with a few more options would have been preferred. The plastic Spartan tank comes with several plastic pieces to decorate your Legion vehicles, for both Loyalist and Traitor. It's just a shame that those pieces never saw release outside of the Spartan itself. The decals are certainly underwhelming, which is a shame because, for the most part, Games Workshop models offer a wide variety of decals that are usually helpful for a lot of different vehicles. So with the decals and the instructions out of the way, let's take a look at the model sprues themselves. And here we have the first sprue. Standard stuff, really. The pieces are all well laid out and organized and labeled with parts numbers that match those in the instructions. The detail on the tracks is really nice, and there's a lot of small details hidden throughout which will be fun to paint. The hull plates look nice too. However, I do want to note that there's an ever so slight bend to the sprues, but nothing that really harms the build itself. That being said, given how expensive these kits are, there really shouldn't be any sort of bends or defects in the kit itself, especially when I've only just taken it out of the box. Next, we have the second sprue. Nothing really exciting here on this one, mainly hatch covers and more armor plates for the Rhino. The parts are detailed and are numbered just like the first sprue. A nice touch is that the side hatches are split in two, so you can have them posed how you want, either open or closed, or you can simply glue them together. And finally, for the last sprue, and which is probably my favorite, as it has all of the cool bits and heavy weapons on it. As you can see, there are tons of things you can add to your kit on this sprue. You have your tank commander and gunner bits, your heavy weapons, your special weapons, and your hatch covers, as well as the dozer blade and other accessories. Even if you don't end up using all of the bits on your Rhino kit, I'm sure you could find use for these weapons on other kits in the Heresy range, or on other 40k vehicles as well, if you're in need of relic equipment or want fancier looking bits. And with the rest of the sprues out of the way, let's take a look at the finished model and discuss the build. And here we have the completed Age of Darkness Deimos Pattern Rhino kit. The build itself is honestly really fun and super satisfying. It's a remix of the old standard Rhino, so if you're familiar with those kits, you'll be able to put this together no problem. Though the build itself is simple enough to not be overly challenging as someone's first Warhammer vehicle kit. The Rhino itself features a lot of parts that can be modeled as open or be removed after the building process if you don't want to glue them permanently. The side doors can be removed as each half of the door is a separate piece. You could glue them in an open position with one half on either side. The top roof pieces can also be removed to view the interior of the Rhino itself, which is full of detail, as well as the back hatch door having the ability to open and close. If you add a little bit of glue to the hinges and let it dry before you put the door in, it will make the door less likely to open on its own. Or you can simply glue the door closed. I like being able to open the back door for diorama purposes, so I leave mine being able to be opened and closed. Every inch of this vehicle looks fantastic. Even the underside is nice, solid, and it has a bit of detail here and there. There are a lot of flat panels on this kit, which would allow for decent opportunities to add your own Legion flair, like text, decorations, bits, and other parts, or freehand iconography. It's just a shame that this kit doesn't come with more to allow you to do that without having to paint them on. The build itself is solid and fun to move around as well. I've seen a lot of people talking about tolerances and parts not wanting to fit together on this kit, but at least on mine, everything went together how it should, and I didn't have any issues with my parts tolerances or getting the model to go together. That being said, this was my kit with my experience, so I can't vouch for everyone. There certainly aren't any gotchas or areas that I had to redo while building this model as well. It was very straightforward. So as long as you pay attention to what you're doing, you'll be fine. The tracks on Rhinos and vehicles in general can be a bit tricky, but they're all labeled in the instructions as well as on the parts sprues, so I had no issue getting the tracks to go on my kit. Now it's time for some size comparisons. For this part, I'll be using a Mars Pattern Rhino that I recently built as a Predator tank with its heavy weapons removed, reverting it back to a Rhino again. As you can see, both the Deimos Pattern and the Mars Pattern Rhino share a near identical profile, which is nice as the Deimos Pattern Rhino gives you another 40k Rhino proxy if you prefer how this one looks compared to the Mars Pattern. And of course, meaning that it scales well with both modern and retro 30k and 40k minis. For example, I have an older Mark IV Betrayal at Calth Sergeant here to see how the Deimos Pattern Rhino stacks up compared to infantry, as well as a Cataphracti Terminator Sergeant from Betrayal at Calth as well. And finally, we have one of the older multi-part 40k Terminators. As you can see, the Rhino scales excellently with infantry of all sizes. Of course, given how 40k vehicles are naturally undersized, it seems like a close enough fit for me in terms of marine to tank ratio. Even large infantry minis like Terminators look good next to it, and the Rhino is scaled well to them too. And finally, the moment you've all been waiting for, we have the new 2022 Deimos Pattern Rhino compared to the original 1988 Rogue Trader Rhino that I have painted up years ago for my Ultramarines. There is an obvious size difference, of course, but not much as one might think having the two models next to each other side by side. The Rogue Trader Rhino is, of course, smaller, but honestly not by much, especially when you look at them from a distance. Their profiles are very close, especially side by side, and with the addition of a dozer blade on the Rogue Trader Rhino, which mine does not have. They would be very hard to tell apart from a distance on the tabletop. Which model you prefer, of course, is certainly up to you. And here we have the return of our Mark IV friend for size comparison's sake once again. Now on to showing off how to maximize your weapon loadouts on your Rhino. It is fairly simple to actually maximize the weapons you can equip your Deimos Pattern Rhino with. We'll start with the hatch-mounted weapons. You have a lot of choices for these, including the Havoc Launcher, and your choice of combi bolters, flamers, meltas, plasmas, and volkites. The Havoc Launcher is probably the easiest one of the lot. Simply build the Havoc Launcher on its hatch and don't glue it down, leaving it to swap freely between both of the hatches. The same can be said for the single closed tank hatch as well. Simply don't glue it and you can move it from one hatch to the other freely. The rest of the weapons aren't any trickier, as each of the combi weapon hatch covers have 2 empty slots as well as a large open area, and each of the separate weapons have pegs that slot into each of these slots in the hatch covers themselves. The key idea to this process is to use a little super glue or plastic glue on the tips of the pegs and allowing them time to dry. This will thicken the peg and allow it to slot in and stay in, as well as being able to be removed without magnets. This applies to the standard combi bolter loadout as well, as they have their own dedicated hatch covers, but the idea is still the same. For example, to make a combi melta, simply take the melta gun bit seen here, as well as one of the combi bolter bits. Take your glue of choice and add a small bit around the pegs of each weapon and allow each one to dry. Next, insert the bolter half into either one of the slots, and by simply inserting the melta into the other, making sure not to glue either piece, this will make a combi melta. Using this method by gluing the stock will remain tight enough to remain in the slot without falling out. Repeat this with any of the other weapons shown here, and you can have whichever combi weapon the situation calls for, and you can also swap them out whenever you want. To be able to swap out your heavy weapons, simply take piece A15 from the instructions in sprue and first attach it to one of the mounting points on the Rhino, either on the left or the right side. It doesn't matter which you choose. Next, once the piece is glued into place, simply take a sanding stick or a hobby knife and sand both of the small pegs, one on each side down, that stick out so the entire piece is flat with no bumps sticking out of it, like so. The piece is sanded flat, assemble each of your heavy weapons, the heavy flamer, the multi-melta, and the heavy bolter, and simply finish assembling the weapons without A15 in each weapon. so that each weapon is now complete with a hollow bottom chamber. After this, simply add a tiny bit of glue to each one of these slots in each weapon, allowing it to dry, and once they're dry, you can simply press each weapon onto the peg and remove it whenever you want. The dried glue combined with the hollow slot will allow the weapon to remain in place, as well as being able to be removed, so you could have whatever heavy weapon you'd like on here. And that is how I made my Rhino a lot more modular, and by extension, any Heresy vehicle that uses this weapon sprue without magnets. Of course, to make things perfect, you could add magnets to the hatches as well as the combi weapons, but I found that they work just fine with a little bit of glue. Now it's time for the part of the video where I summarize my thoughts based on a few different categories. These categories are build. Simply put, how well does the kit go together? Is it tricky or is it enjoyable? Does it require absolute attention or can you relax while you build it? Looks. How does this model or finished product look when compared to the box? Does it require modifications or outside materials to make it a finished product? Material quality. How are the materials that make up the kit? Do they feel nice to handle or does it crumble when you look at it? Accessories and decals. Does this kit come with extras? Does it let you customize your kit? How about accessories? And how are the decals? What are the quality of the decals? And finally, instructions. Simply, how useful are they? Does the kit even come with instructions? Can you use them without looking at any other guides, online or otherwise? Are there any major mistakes or slip-ups that no longer apply to this kit or the instructions outdated? And are they readable or even understandable? So, with our categories out of the way, how does the Rhino fare? Let's find out. Build. I'm going to give this model a 4.5 out of 5. The build is simple, fun, easy to understand, and you could do a lot with this model as a base. The assembly is easy and there are no tricks thrown at you, and I might even go as far as saying this would make for an excellent first-time Warhammer vehicle should someone be inclined to pick it out. Looks. I'm going to give this model a 4.5 out of 5. It really captures the Rogue Trader Heresy vibe of the older vehicle kits while bringing it into the modern Heresy scaling of both 30k and scales nearly perfectly with the Mars Pattern Rhino for 40k. It has an ancient historical vibe to it that really helps it stand apart from the Mars pattern and looks fantastic. Material quality. 4.5. Games Workshop plastic is incredibly hard to beat in terms of models. It glues well, it's forgiving, and you can cut, magnetize, drill, and do whatever you want, and it will remain super strong and resilient. I will take points off, however, and not give it a perfect score, as the sprues came bent out of the box. While not causing significant damage, white marks, or strain, for the price of these models and for how much Games Workshop charges for them, these sprues certainly shouldn't have any problems, especially after immediately taking them out of the box. Accessories and decals. 4 out of 5. I'm going to give this model a 4 for the accessories and decal ratings. As for accessories, there are many great pieces that can be used on this kit and other kits, but the fact that the decals are only for the Sons of Horus and the Imperial Fists definitely hurt it in this department. Additionally, the fact that plastic detail bits do exist in the Spartan kit that would be perfect to add in this kit, but were not carried over to the Rhino, as important as the Rhino is to practically any Heresy army, is a bit criminal. Certainly not the end of the world, but a general vehicle sheet, especially given how tricky to do Legion markings and vehicle markings can be, would improve this rating, but the wide range of accessories and extra weapons definitely carries the Deimos Pattern Rhino in this category, allowing a person to model their Rhino in a lot of different ways. Finally, for the instructions, I'm going to give this kit a 5. The instructions are easy to understand and take you step-by-step, parts numbers labeled accurately and correctly on both the sprues and the instructions themselves, which make it easy to understand and bring your model to life. So with our totals, what's the verdict? Would I recommend the Deimos Pattern Rhino kit by Games Workshop? Without a doubt in my mind, I would definitely recommend this model. It's a fun, relaxing, and rewarding build, and its tons of extra accessories could be super helpful with a wide variety of builds. An awesome tribute to a Rogue Trader classic, upscaled for the modern era, and would look right at home in a display case or carrying inventory. Definitely pick this kit up, you won't regret it.